Hello, and welcome back again to this special edition episode of Upside Down Shark Radio, where we will count down our top 10 horror movies of all time, given that that is the season. I am Tom. I am joined by Paul today.
Hey guys.
Just the two of us, so we'll be taking essentially one each at a time and breaking down this list. So let's jump right into it with Paul with number 10.
Just bear in mind that this list is in no particular order, except for the last one, because it's definitely the best film.
That is true. So here we go, number 10.
First on the list, we're going to talk a little bit about Alien, the original James Cameron movie from 1980.
James Cameron, did you say?
My apologies.
Oh dear.
My apologies.
I mean, Aliens is a great
Aliens
film.
is James Cameron.
But Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott. It's because we were talking about Covenant and everything earlier.
Yeah.
Obviously Alien, if you haven't seen it, is about an alien infestation. By infestation I mean a singular alien.
That's all you need, though. That's all you need.
It is a singular alien that has been bred and engineered to kill.
On a mining vessel, isn't it? So none of them are soldiers. None of them have any real weaponry at all.
No, absolutely not. It was. So obviously, there's an iconic scene, the John Hurt scene.
Oh yes. If you don't know it, just watch it.
Where the rest of the cast didn't even know what was going to happen, just the director and John Hurt. So the reaction on all of their faces is genuine. They thought he was in pain and was about to choke to death.
And it was actually real blood that they used. So I won't say what happens, but what is sprayed on the cast is real blood. So that just makes it even more horrific and delicious. And
like Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley, arguably the strongest female character.
It's 1 and 2, her and Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor.
Definitely. And I don't know what that says, but those are two of the best films ever made, in my opinion. Alien and Terminator 2.
You can't get much better than those two. They are the shining beacons of 80s nostalgia for me, even though I was born in the 90s.
So if you haven't seen it, go and watch Alien.
Okay, so number 9, we have The Shining, the Stanley Kubrick version. Arguably his best film. Definitely the best Stephen King adaptation, I would say, so far. But the film that he detests the most, allegedly.
Really?
Yeah, he really doesn't like it. It chronicles the slow descent into the descent into madness of Jack Nicholson's character, who's also called Jack. Can't remember his surname. As him and his young family are caretaking a gigantic hotel, so he can have some isolation to do some writing, and they can just have a break, and they get paid to do it. But the isolation slowly gets to him, and he ends up going a bit choppy on them.
That's a bit of an understatement.
Well, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Obviously, it's coupled with hallucinations and various other scenes. Obviously, you've seen there have been multiple parodies of it over the years.
That there have.
You've got The Simpsons' The Shinning.
You wanna get sued?
You've got the episode of South Park where Randy buys Blockbuster.
I've forgotten about that one. Oh yeah, it is. But that's the thing. It's so much in the zeitgeist now that it is just part of horror history. The table that we are recording on has coasters decorated like the carpet from the corridors of the Overlook Hotel. There is even a certain holiday company called Holiday Extras based down here in the southeast, and they used a hotel review of the Overlook Hotel as their Halloween video, which I highly recommend on Facebook and YouTube. You should definitely check that out.
I look forward to giving that a watch.
Okay, and that is our first delving into the world of Stephen King, but we're going to run on straight to number 8 with Paul.
Number 8, in Event Horizon. It's I don't know whether it's a relatively well-known film or a little-known film, but it's one that has stuck with me since I saw it at an age I shouldn't have seen it, and it just stuck with me. It was just I genuinely enjoyed it, always have. Obviously, you got it's about a starship that they develop a new a new transportation drive, like which they believe to be like an FTL drive, faster than light drive. But it turns out it opens a portal through what is essentially a hell dimension.
Well, you don't want that.
And everybody that's been through it was driven almost instantaneously insane. And like it's got Lawrence Fishburne and Sam Neill in it, and just the performances are phenomenal.
Because it's one of those ones where you look at the poster and it doesn't instantly scream out horror to you. It looks more like just a hammy sci-fi film.
It looks like a hammy sci-fi film, but it's not. It's a genuinely unsettling.
And I hear that there was one scene which was cut, which apparently you can only find rough footage of, which is of more of the hell dimension and the people like tearing themselves apart and everything, which is super graphic.
Yeah, there are some really graphic scenes in there. Obviously, there's a scene with Sam Neill where he cuts his own eyeballs out.
Oof. Not Alan Grant,
but acts like nothing happened. Like, it's a genuinely unsettling film. If you like horror and you like sci-fi, it's definitely worth a watch of Event Horizon if you haven't seen it already.
Just as a side note, not as part of the list, but maybe as an honourable mention, Jurassic Park has got some great horror elements in it. The first one...
Yeah, Jurassic Park is definitely a suspense thriller.
Yeah. I mean, those raptors, when...
Clever girl.
Yeah, they're being hunted by raptors. It's just so tense and so terrifying. And even when they're in the kitchen, that's the scene I'm thinking of. It could be Michael Myers.
Yeah,
chasing him.
Yeah, quite easily. Like I would definitely. Obviously, Jurassic Park is one of the greatest movies of all time. Like,
of course,
it's one of those films. It doesn't matter when it's on. Like, you watch it if it's on television and you're flicking through. It doesn't matter how far into the film it is. You'll watch it.
Damn straight. I mean, it's got an all-star cast. Sam Neill again, but special mention has to go to the excellent pairing of Samuel L. Jackson and Wayne Knight as two just IT workers. We have certainly got Dodson over here. But that is a tangent for another day. I'm sure there'll be plenty of Jurassic Park talk in the future. But
so we'll move on now to what is arguably the most harrowing film
Jesus Christ.
on the list. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about Fire in the Sky?
Well, not really, but I feel like we have to. Fire in the Sky is quite a low-budget film. It went really under the radar, but it chronicles the Travis Walton abduction case, where I believe it was in either the 40s or the 50s. A lumberjack, got abducted by aliens coming home, only to return a few weeks later and have his experience come back slowly throughout the next few days. And by God, if you have any sort of inclination of alien abduction or any fears about the idea that aliens have visited or that they might be out there and have nefarious means, do not watch this film, because it will just trigger the shit out of you.
Yeah, there are like graphic scenes of his abduction which you very rarely get to see in movies. They tend to glaze over it as a like they blur the background and you hear a couple of noises. It's similar to, in a way, there's an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Is this the one
where Riker's trying to remember what happened?
Yes, I know this one.
Imagine that turned up to 11. It's that. That's
a good analogy, actually. And it's even worse when you know that this story hasn't been completely discredited. There is the most irrefutable evidence. I say irrefutable. It's the hardest evidence to dispute of an alien abduction, because they've taken all the polygraph tests. There's been physical evidence on Travis Walton's body of the things that he claims. And obviously this isn't hard evidence, but at the same time it does instill that nugget of doubt in your head that what you're seeing isn't just fantasy, and this might have just happened.
All it takes is it could be.
And then you go out at night after seeing this film and you see a plane or
underlit bird.
Yeah, an underlit bird, and it's just the most terrifying existence I can think of. Again, going off on a slight tangent, Aliens have always scared me to the point where the episode of The Simpsons Files, where Mr. Burns is mistaken as an alien from the X-Files.
I bring you love.
I could not watch that until I was older than I'd care to admit, because it was too scary. All the Treehouse of Horrors were absolutely fine. In fact, we should probably do a Treehouse of Horror top 10 list at some point as well, because there's some doozies in there. But yeah, by God, that is the scariest stuff. And I think that's where a lifelong fear of extraterrestrials have come from. And Fire in the Sky has only exacerbated that. So I think that's enough talk on Fire in the Sky, because I want to try and forget that film exists.
Yeah, I definitely want to forget it before I translate tonight.
Oh yeah. So with that note, let's go on to something a little bit more light-hearted.
This one is genuinely one of my favourite films. It's what I consider to be the most original comedy movie of the last probably 10-15 years that I know of. It's Tucker and Dale versus Evil. It's Alan Tudyk and I believe Taylor Labine.
Yes, I think that's his name.
Yeah. Basically, it's an alternate take on the hillbilly slasher movies. You know, the movies where kids go camping in the woods and they get picked off one by hillbillies who are just out to kill for no reason other than
the cliche schlocky
being inbred.
Yeah.
Hills Have Eyes. It's that kind of thing, only from the perspective of the rednecks. They've gone up to their cabin in the woods, which is their holiday home that they saved up to buy, and they're doing renovations, and there is a series of misunderstandings
between them and a group of teenagers who are coming out to camp there. And the teenagers end up being the absolute worst people in the world. Yeah,
it's an alternate take on that, and it's genuinely funny. Like, I mean, obviously, I love Alan Tudyk,
of course.
In basically everything, he's hands down the best character in the Transformers movie.
I didn't even know he was in the Transformers movie.
He's got a couple of lines in it, and I genuinely wanted a spin-off movie just about him.
Yeah, that would be better than whatever they're doing at the moment, although John Cena and Bumblebee might just swing me back around.
I don't know about that.
We'll see. But yeah, he's even in Rogue One as K2SO, and again, probably the best character in the film.
He's Disney's go-to voice guy at the moment. He had a series that got cancelled. Basically,
Firefly?
He had another series that got cancelled called Powerless. It was set in the DC universe, and it was about just some regular people that work in an office. They work for under Wayne Tech, so they're like R&D, research and development for products.
Lucius
for Wayne
Fox's
Tech,
division,
only lower down.
Okay.
And Alan Tudyk plays Bruce Wayne's cousin.
Brilliant.
And it got cancelled. Like, it was Alan Tudyk, Danny Pudi from Community.
Oh yeah.
There was a beautiful cameo from Adam West.
Oh, God bless. R.I.P. R.I.P.
But yeah, I think 8 episodes into the 10 episode series, it got cancelled.
So they didn't even finish the first series, really?
No, there was a couple of episodes that only recently got aired in New Zealand. And
that's
the only reason I've seen them.
That's some deep cuts right there.
But yeah, like, it's just one of those.
But yeah, that's what makes Tucker and Dale so good, is the Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine. They just come across as the sweetest guys in cinema. They just seem like the most lovely people, but they just look like the most hard, rough rednecks going. And it just is such a good take. It's so refreshing to see basically the trope flipped on its head. And it's just so well done. It's so well done. Can't recommend it enough. If you're a fan of Cabin in the Woods and want something in a similar vein of this trope-busting comedic horror that still is good enough to be scary, then definitely give Tucker and Dale a shout.
Absolutely. It's on Netflix, as I think as is Fire in the Sky.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend that. It's just too scary.
No. Yeah, I highly recommend Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And sticking with the theme of a cabin in the woods,
Number 5.
which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, may even have been the first cabin in the woods style.
I think it invented it, or at least it brought it into the mainstream.
The series did, at least.
Yeah.
Is Evil Dead.
Evil Dead.
The story of Ash.
Ash Campbell?
Is Bruce Campbell.
Ash Campbell. I'm going to rename him Ash Campbell.
The story of Ash.
Yes.
Fighting against Deadites.
Yep.
Which is the forces of evil that inhabit living and or dead people. I mean, considering the first movie, like, it was a Sam Raimi movie, obviously the man responsible for Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man,
which I think is underrated, kind of, but again, another story for another day.
Less about that now. Yeah. Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell were basically left in the woods with some other people and made this film on an incredibly low budget, and it got such a cult following that they ended up being able to commission a second one with a higher budget, which they used to essentially make the same film.
It is pretty much a remake, isn't it?
Number 2 is essentially a remake with a slightly different ending. And then the third one, which isn't even owned by Sam Raimi,
nope.
Army of Darkness.
Well, that pushed the boat out in terms of campiness.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I love Evil Dead.
It did bring us our boomstick.
It did bring us. There were some absolute classic lines.
Yeah.
But it didn't stop there. They more recently, about 5 years ago, they remade Evil Dead into an actual, genuinely unsettling horror film.
Is. I think it broke the record for the most fake blood ever used on a feature film, and I'm not surprised.
I don't doubt that. Like,
it literally rains blood from the sky in the final scene.
It does. The protagonist of that is no longer Bruce Campbell. It's not Ash. It's Mia.
Yes.
Jane Levy. Phenomenal performance. Like, genuinely unsettling. There were some really nice Easter eggs in there for the fans of Evil Dead, but you don't have to have seen any of the Evil Deads to get any of it. It is just a quite terrifying film.
It's good, because if they tried to go down the same route of making it campy schlocky like the original trilogy was going, it would have been such a misstep. So by diverting away into straight po-faced horror, they really made it their own.
Yeah.
But on the topic of keeping up with the campiness and going down the route that this movie series was going, Ash came back, didn't he, Paul?
Ash did come back, and he still works at the Buy and Save, or whatever the...
Well, it was called S-Mart in the original movies, but because of the rights bollocks that was going around with Army of Darkness, they had to call it something else.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, but they had to change the name. But he's still a store clerk, essentially.
We are talking about the series Ash vs. Evil Dead, which is one of my favourite series.
Mine too.
It's the one I genuinely look forward to watching each week and cannot wait for the next one. We're in between series at the moment, but I am fully up to date. I believe you've still got a few to watch.
Yes, I'm about halfway through series 2, so no spoilers, please. Okay. But essentially, Bruce Campbell has become Ash. I really believe the character and the man have crossed lines to the point that they are the same entity now.
I have no problem with that.
No. He fully plays up the ailments of age. He's a bit podgy around his sides. He's not got all his teeth anymore, but he still kicks ass.
The one-liners just free flow throughout, but it does genuinely. One thing I will stress about this series: it genuinely walks the line between scary and funny.
Definitely.
1 second it will be terrifying. I don't think you've seen it yet. There is a demon shows up in one of the episodes, and just the camera effects they use on it makes it unsettling.
Well, it's just at the start of series 2 where those demon children that spew out the black vomit stuff. They're horrible.
Those things are like genuinely unsettling. And then conversely, there is like stupidly funny scenes. Like the one, I don't know if we would have seen the scene in the morgue yet.
Which one is that?
You'd know it if if you had seen it.
There's
a scene with Ash in a morgue and a dead body.
Oh no, I have seen that. Yeah.
The intestine.
Yeah.
And the.
Yeah. But at the same time, his dad is played by Lee Majors, who is the $6 million man.
Yep, and then you got one of the other main characters played by Lucy Lawless. Used to be Xena.
I almost said Xena. That's a completely different character from a completely different religion.
But whether you like Evil Dead or not, you should probably give this series a try. It is genuinely scary. It is genuinely funny.
Yeah, I would say it is more than a match for any of the original films in terms of entertainment.
And I say that they are pushing the most fake blood used in any production ever.
Yeah, I swear that's where half the budget's going.
Sam Raimi just loves his fake blood.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, aside from Spider-Man 3, he's made a particularly bad film. Like Drag Me to Hell. He did Darkman, didn't he, as well?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, they're all at least serviceable films. I would still argue that Spider-Man 2 is probably the best Spider-Man film, if not the best non-MCU Marvel film ever made.
Ooh,
that and Logan, it's up there.
Possibly.
Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is...
I'd probably throw the first Blade in there.
I haven't seen them.
That's actually... That film stands up pretty well.
Not the third one with Triple H.
Not the third one.
Triple H. Oh dear.
Despite featuring Ryan Reynolds.
Really young Ryan Reynolds. Yeah. Anyway, number 4 is The Thing. More specifically, the 1980s remake, because it is a remake, starring Kurt Russell, which I would argue is the best minimalist horror going. It's basically based around a small research facility out in the Antarctic of American scientists, all men, where through a series of events, I won't spoil it, a alien parasite enters the base, infects a dog, replaces the dog's being completely to the point where it looks identical to the dog, and then proceeds to infect the researchers one by one to where you don't know who's alien, you don't know who's human, and yeah, it's just the idea that you don't know who you're talking to, whether or not they're a friend or if they're a monster. It's just so tense because it didn't need any special effects to be terrifying, but you're also complemented with arguably the best physical special effects ever used in a horror film. Some of the creature effects used in The Thing are absolutely horrifying. You get spider skulls, you get dogs with spindly spider tentacles and tendrils coming out. It's just visceral. It is just the most visceral horror film, and you wouldn't get anything like it today because it's just too expensive to do. CG so good now that you don't need to. But man, it is a treasure. It's a treasure.
But what about Ray Harryhausen and The Claw?
I mean, there is a time and a place for Ray Harryhausen films. I am a big fan of Sinbad and Clash of the Titans, the original one. Fuck Sam Worthington. And yeah, I can appreciate that. But at the same time, you can tell when a skeleton man is just stop motion, and you can tell when a skeleton man is just a costume.
But The Claw, Tom. The Claw.
If you want to put The Claw on the list, man, then be my guest. But yeah, just for the legacy that it's had, the soundtrack is just perfect. It is just one synth for most of it, and it just works so well for the tone of the film. There's lots of dogs in it, and I'm a big fan of dogs, so that's always good.
Unless you're a fan of dogs in this film.
Well, there is a lot of dog death, but at the same time, they're pretty cute, and you know they're not actually dead. But they probably are now. This film was set a long time ago.
There's a lot of dog death in 8 Below, and that's a Disney film.
I haven't seen that. Is that one with Cuba Gooding Jr. in it? Or am I thinking of a different one?
No, I think this is a Paul Walker film.
Oh dear.
Paul Walker
R.I.P.
and Huskies.
Sounds like the most direct DVD Disney production ever. But yeah, it's not much more to say about the thing. I would also recommend watching the prequel sequel that came out afterwards, starring Kate. What was her name? Mary Elizabeth Winstead. That's it. Which amazingly, the last scene of that film is the first scene of the 80s original, in quotation marks. So you can essentially watch them as one long feature, and it just meshes so well. So I would recommend arguably doing a double bill of both of them. I think it's a worthwhile investment of your time.
That's a good shout. Similar to Rogue One and Star Wars: A New Hope.
New Hope, yeah. Again, a great ending. Rogue One is it's weird. I left the cinema for Force Awakens probably not as satisfied as for Rogue One, but it was a better film overall. But the final third of Rogue One is just flawless Star Wars. Just flawless.
Star Wars needed more Donnie Yen.
It needed more Donnie Yen, and it needed more Vader corridor scene.
That
is the most horror Star Wars has ever got.
Yeah,
that is a horror movie. That is a horror movie scene of just Vader just decimating people and being completely unstoppable.
Short of towards the end of Episode 3, the infamous
Order 66 stuff.
No, I was thinking more of the higher ground.
Oh Lord. Can I make another quick beeline? God, there's a lot of tangents in this. That Obi-Wan claims to have beaten Anakin by saying, "It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground." There are two examples in the prequel trilogy where Obi-Wan defeats his nemesis from the low ground. He defeats Darth Maul, grabbing onto the edge of a massive pit, manages to launch himself up and defeat Darth Maul. He also manages to defeat General Grievous holding onto another ledge with a blaster in his hand. I don't know if this was poor writing. I don't know if this is Obi-Wan just psyching out Anakin and convincing him that he's won, even though he's like, oh, maybe not.
I think he was just like politely saying to Anakin, "Bitch, please, it's me. You're gonna lose."
I don't know, man. It's troubled me.
Obi-Wan is undefeated.
He is OP, and I really hope they bring back Ewan McGregor to do a standalone Obi-Wan movie at some point.
That would be wonderful.
He is the right age to bridge the gap now.
I believe he lent his voice to a voiceover flashback.
He did
for Episode 7.
Yes, he imitated Alec Guinness's intonations for it and did a really, really good job, I thought.
Yeah. Somebody had to point out to me that it was Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, because he says Rey, and obviously Rey is a new character. And yeah, it's just he is probably more Obi-Wan than Alec Guinness. So
at this point, I would tend to agree.
He is him and Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon. Man, I don't know why the Phantom Menace gets the hard shtick that it does, because that is a brilliant pairing.
Yeah, it gave us Darth Maul and Duel of Fates
and pod racing. And this is pod racing. No, it's not. This is number 3, which is me again, and Saw. More specifically, the first one in the series, because we won't talk about some of the hit and miss sequels. I give them a pass because I like the first one so much. But Saw is basically the story of a investigation to catch a killer who doesn't actually kill his victims. He just puts them in situations where they have to fight for survival in such hard and grotesque ways that most of them don't succeed, all with the intention, the motivation of making them appreciate life more than they do. So he will target smokers, he'll target people who have self-harmed, people who he doesn't believe have given life the appreciation as the gift that he believes it is. And so it's all essentially filmed within a bathroom where two unknowing victims are chained up by the ankle, and it just basically chronicles their way of trying to get out while a detective played by Danny Glover tries to stop Jigsaw, as the killer is called, from perpetrating his crimes.
I believe one of the manacled men is Carrie
Elwes from.
I always struggle with surname.
I think it's Elwes from Princess Bride.
Yes.
And
Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Indeed. And he is very good in this. He's very good. He does make another appearance later in the series. Again, no spoilers, because that is in number 7. So you have to be in the long haul to get the reference. But the thing about Saw is that it's one of these ones that everyone watches at Halloween, because I believe every single film, bar maybe the first one, came out at Halloween weekend.
Yeah.
It's not actually that much of a horror film. It's more of a crime detective thriller.
The first one was more of, it sort of changed the game. It set the tone for a new style of gory horror movie, which previously wasn't really seen except possibly in Final Destination, but that was a whole different sort of series of unfortunate events.
Well, it was more. The first one was more of almost a crime film with horror elements, and it would later go on to just become pretty much straight horror, to the point where it almost became an excuse for the prop guys to show off what they could do with a loose premise, essentially allowing it to go from set piece to set piece, which I'm fine with, because obviously if they're really good at making these set pieces and they can do it in a creative way, then I can appreciate their art. Doesn't necessarily make a great movie, but the first one is a really great movie as well. I think it's indicative that James Wan has had a very successful directorial career coming out of Saw, because of the legacy it's had. He's gone on to, was it Fast and Furious 8 that he went on to direct?
I believe
it was either Fast 7 or Fast 8.
It was one of the Fast films,
which was highly acclaimed as well.
It also spawned the influences of things like other movies like Hostel, The Collector, and various other slasher movies like that.
Yep.
And there are very few that changed the game in the 2000s.
Yeah, I mean
that late into movies.
It kind of, it's hard to explain, because it didn't rely on jump scares, but at the same time it brought about this whole shock, almost torture porn jump scare generation, which I think we're only just getting out of with the likes of The Babadook and Stranger Things, kind of. The idea that these are things that you don't really have to rely on jump scares, it's more the atmosphere and the tension. I think that's the new generation we're going into. But from sort of 2004 through to pretty much 2015, 2016, Saw set the tone of what horror films would be for a decade. And I don't think it was ever matched from the first one. I think you don't forget your first, and the first was the best.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
And mentioning it, we'll roll on straight to number 2, which is the 2017 iteration of It, the remake of the 1980s miniseries based on the Stephen King novel. Chronicles the small group of children who are stalked and harassed by an alien clown called Pennywise, who kind of feeds on their fear. He claims in the book that it basically is the garnish for eating them, is that it makes their children more delicious to eat them, to make them scared
like
first.
A
marinade of fear, which sounds like a really great metal band name. The new one is superior to the original miniseries, I would suggest. It's got a pretty no-name cast, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think there's any
relatively.
There's no
relatively
real
unknown
big names. There's no A-listers as far as I can think off the top of my head. But my God, I don't know where they keep finding all these child actors from, but they're all stellar. But when you see all the awful child actors that have been in horror films in recent years, they're all absolute pros at it. It's also doesn't shy away from some pretty nasty imagery. Noticeably, the first death is of I would imagine like a 5 or 6 year old boy. He has his arm quite brutally bitten off by Pennywise, the mutant alien clown, and it's quite upsetting. I personally thought it worked better as a horror coming of age film. I know some people who were so scared by it they couldn't finish it and had to walk out.
Really?
But yeah, it was that scary. But I would say if you combined Killer Clowns from Outer Space with Stand By Me, you're onto what it is. And I don't say that with any sort of derision or any type of mockery. Those are two really great films of their time, and I think bringing them into obviously it's set in the 80s, but bringing them into modern cinema, it works really, really well. I'm really looking forward to part 2. I think it worked well again to break it into 2 parts. Obviously the original book is broken into 2 halves where the cast are children, and then later when they come back to this town as adults. So I'm really looking forward to seeing who they bring in to play him as adults.
It'll be interesting to see whether they stick to a relatively unknown cast and try and get some up and coming actors to play the kids as adults, or whether they're just gonna plaster A-list all over it. Just like for the A-listers that want to be in it more than for a budget. If they stick to a small budget, you can still get good actors, like A-list actors, to cameo and stuff. It's whether they'll play those 6 or 7 kids.
That's the thing. I don't have any faith in multi-cast and A-listers again after what they tried with the was it the Dark Universe, the Universal monster movie universe they tried to start up again with The Mummy with Tom Cruise. And
I've yet to see that.
I've yet to see it, but apparently it's garbage. And was it Russell Crowe who's going to play the Invisible Man, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Okay. I think it was the latter, to be honest. And it just doesn't work. There's egos getting in the way for screen time. Sometimes they just don't gel. I would rather have a great cast of unknowns that get on really well and have great chemistry than 5 familiar faces that just are dead as anything.
Well, I half expect to see Tom Hiddleston turn up in it, because that's the kind of thing he would do as a project. He does, outside of doing movies where he plays Loki. What else can you think that he's been in generally? He does
That's
more
true.
obscure roles. He's in The Night Manager with Hugh Laurie, the series.
True.
He's in Warhorse. Like he comes from stage. He's a classically trained actor. Works with the likes of Kenneth Branagh. Like if anything, I think he would play a grown-up version of one of those.
Well, let's briefly try and power rank. Who would we want as to play the cast if we had unlimited budget? The hypochondriac kid, I think, could be played really well by. This is harder than I thought.
You put yourself on the spot there, Tom.
I have put myself on the spot. Who could play him? As much as it pains me to say it, I think the guy who plays Light Tucker in the Death Note film, can't remember the actor's name, I think he could play that, because he's kind of like that kind of obnoxious, whiny thing. I think if they were going to keep it sort of relatively tween, then he could be doing that, but it depends if they'd want to make it full-blown adult. I don't know.
It also depends when they set
That's it, because
if they're going to go, if they're going to set it 15 years later, or whether they're going to set it 30 years later.
That's the thing, because in the original film they are middle-aged people, but I don't know how that would translate. I think it might be more marketable for them to stay as 20-somethings.
Yeah. Although I would enjoy seeing Seth Green come back as one of the adults, bearing in mind he was one of the kids in the original.
That would be really cool. At least a cameo.
Problem is, none of them are ginger.
Yeah, and he's not a pretty adult either. I don't know. Maybe you should just do the hammiest actors imaginable. Maybe if we're going to go down that route, I would definitely have Steven Seagal play the ladies' man, the Finn Wolfhard character. Linda Hamilton play the girl. Can't remember any of their names, to be honest. Woody Allen play the hypochondriac. Oh jeez. Keep him away from Linda Hamilton. Samuel L. Jackson plays the black kid. And I can't remember anyone else. Jack Black plays the fat kid.
I tell you who I would probably cast, like in all reality, cast or try to cast as the girl. As previously mentioned, Jane Levy.
Yeah, that would make sense. And she's still relatively unknown.
Yeah, like I reckon she'd do that really well. I don't know if you've seen another honourable mention for a genuinely unsettling film. Don't Breathe.
I haven't seen that yet, but that looked good.
That is a fantastic film.
Again, there's no paranormal elements to that, is there?
Absolutely no paranormal in it whatsoever. It's very little even violence. It's just a really suspenseful film. It's not not particularly violent. It's not particularly gory. It's not paranormal in any way. It is just an unsettling, very, very tense film from start to end.
Interesting, yeah. Because it's the guy from Avatar that really looks like Cable is the main antagonist.
Stephen
Lang, that's it. Yeah. I heard good press about it, but it's one that has slipped under my radar.
Yeah, I like honourable mention in the Halloween playlist. Definitely give Don't Breathe a watch.
We will put this list in the description as well. So even if you don't want to watch this entire video, you can see what our list is. But if you've stayed this long, you might as well stay for number one as well. What is number one, Paul?
What else could number one be?
Let's have a think. What could number one be? Could it be Serbian film? Could it be...
Despite that being a genuinely terrifying concept.
Human Centipede 2.
Again, genuinely unsettling, but still no.
Are you saying it's what I think it is?
It's definitely what you think it is.
Are you saying that there is no movie, only Zool?
There is no movie, only Zool.
That's right. What are we talking about, Paul?
The number one Halloween film, in my opinion, of all time has to be Ghostbusters.
Bustin' makes me feel good. Yes.
Like, not only is it one of my favourite films of all time, because the cast is fantastic, the writing's fantastic, just everything about the film is fantastic, except the modern version.
I haven't seen that yet, nor do I really want to. Anyway,
if you want a third Ghostbusters film, play the game.
I was about to say, they say that was what finished off the trilogy perfectly.
It was a really good game as well.
I've yet to play it. But yeah, you just can't go wrong with Ghostbusters. It straddles the line between comedy and some really quite unsettling moments, even just from the offset. The ghost in the library is quite scary, especially if you're a kid, because this is, again, a film that's marketed predominantly to children. That can scare you. And anything with Rick Moranis in it is instantly...
The cast is phenomenal. You've got Rick Moranis, Sigourney Weaver...
Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Slimer, Devil Dogs, and a 20-foot Stay Puft Marshmallow Man as a terrifying concept.
The cutest, most terrifying.
And it's just iconic. It set the bar for comedy horror, and I don't think it's ever been matched.
No, I don't think it ever has, and I don't think it ever will be. I mean, not only that, the chemistry between the cast themselves. Obviously, half of the lines in the film are improvised.
I did not know that.
There are genuinely loads of them.
Is "this man has no dick" line? Is that improvised?
That is an improvised line, as far as I'm aware.
I am so happy. I am so happy that that's true.
And just the writing on it was phenomenal. Even some of the more subtle jokes, like in the library, Dan Aykroyd says, "Shh, listen. Can you smell that?"
I remember that. Yeah, it's just timeless. It hasn't aged today. It's still as good now as it ever was. Even the special effects look pretty damn good. Today, because there isn't that much in terms of it. It is, again, as you say, is the human element of it which really makes it stand out from its peers. The sequel, still pretty good. It gets a bit lambasted, but
I have never ever had an issue with Ghostbusters 2. I take exception to people that do. I have literally no problems with Ghostbusters 2. I'm almost going to go as far as to say it's as good as the first one. Almost.
Hotly controversial.
Almost.
And it has arguably the best horror theme music of any film of the genre. Ghostbusters by Ray Parker Jr. I mean,
I lovingly have it on vinyl in 2 separate instances.
That is glorious, and I'm very jealous of that. But any song from your score that gets into the mainstream charts, you know it's probably onto a winner.
Yeah, short of being Will Smith, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and God bless him, Will Smith's a little bit washed out now.
No,
Ghostbusters.
there's a new series, Bright, coming to Netflix.
Oh yeah,
which is an LA cop show that features orcs, fairies, and magic.
okay. And this is starring Will Smith.
Starring Will Smith as one of the main characters.
Interesting.
He's just a regular guy, an LA cop, but it's in a world where magic and creatures like mythical creatures like that exist. And for all intents and purposes, it's an allegory where orcs are represented as black people. Only Will Smith's an LA cop, and his partner is an orc, and they're not accepted in society.
I see.
So he's been partnered with the orc, and like it's the orc trying to prove himself that he's just as good as any person.
Interesting.
And it genuinely looks like it's going to be fantastic because it's Will Smith.
I'm definitely going to have to watch that. And just to segue into our Christmas content, which will be coming in the next few months after this, have you seen the trailer or are you aware of the series coming out called Happy?
Happy. I think I have, yes. Yes, I have. It's the little unicorn, isn't it?
It is the little unicorn. It is the most hardened, grizzled street rat man who I believe he has some sort of... it's either through addiction or through some injury. He starts seeing his child's... It's a strange child's imaginary animal friend called Happy, who is a little purple unicorn, appear all over the place. And so he is this absolute scumbag, dirtbag, alcoholic druggie who is now followed by his it's a strange child's imaginary friend who convinces him that he has to change his ways and save Christmas for his little girl. And it was based on a comic book series. I can't remember the author's name, but it is fantastic, the series. Would highly recommend it, and I'd highly recommend you watch the trailer. Again, I'll leave a link to the trailer in the description. But yeah, if you want something that's not exactly PG, but in the theme of Christmas, definitely check it out. Think Punisher crossed with Bad Santa with Billy Bob Thornton.
So the Deadpool Christmas special.
Pretty much, but you feel even dirtier watching it. I distinctly remember feeling really dirty watching it, reading it.
So the Star Wars Christmas special.
Hey man, that makes you feel sick. That doesn't make you feel dirty, and I still think it's got its merits. Isn't Chewbacca's dad called Lumpy or something?
I tried to block it from memory.
There's definitely a Wookiee called Lumpy.
I can't even.
Hey man, the Boba Fett cartoon is pretty good, but the rest of it you can pretty much get rid of.
The Ewoks movies are okay. Caravan of Courage. Any movie where you get to see a baby Ewok die.
You are the worst. You are the worst kind of person. And on that pleasant note, that is our top 10 horror movies for 2017. We hope you've enjoyed it and it's given you a bit of inspiration to check out some of these titles yourself. On that note, I've been Tom.
I'm still Paul.
Yeah, you are. And we've been Upside Down Shark Radio. Keep it spooky.